Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to Who Wore It Better, where I review Raw and SmackDown back-to-back and try and figure out which show won for the week. It's a new year, a new haircut, and a brand new belt. Oh, belt. I love you so much, new belt. The opening moments of Raw this week had some very subtle differences to what we usually see, because usually we open the show with Kurt Angle coming out and cutting a promo like he does. He would do that in a minute, but what we had before that, though, was the announcers running down like the big matches of the night, and then instead of going Kurt Angle, we go backstage and we see Alexa Bliss running around trying to find Kurt and talk her way out of her match with Asuka later in the night. So that was kind of cool. Like, we would get the Kurt Angle expository promo moments later, but it was kind of cool to see that little difference. It's a very tiny, subtle change where instead of doing that, you go backstage for just a minute before the actual promo. We don't see that very often, and I did notice that. Kurt Angle announces that John Cena is going to be in the men's Rumble match, which I'm glad he clarified that, because before he said that, I had no idea which Rumble match John Cena was going to be involved in. Speaking of which, he brings up the rules to the women's match and how they're going to be the same as the men's, which I'm all for, because I hate seeing like women's battle royals or like Rumble-esque matches where it's like it's not over the top, where it's like middle or sometimes even bottom rope counts for elimination. So I'm glad they're making that kind of equal among men and women for the Rumble matches. Then out come the Bar, and then I can't believe it took him 3 months to figure this out, that maybe Cesaro should take his mouth guard out of his mouth before he cuts a promo. Jason Jordan comes down and says he wants a match with Cesaro right then and there. Then out comes Seth Rollins and says that, hey, you're being a hothead. What are you doing getting yourself involved in this risky situation? I have to protect my investment as a tag team champion, so now I got to cover your ass. So he's going to be in the corner of Jason Jordan in this match against Cesaro. It's a pretty good match between these two. I love that Cesaro's working the leg and Jordan is selling it like death. He's just screaming in pain as his knee is being attacked. They're playing up this kind of mentor or coach relationship for Rollins in relation to Jordan, which does feel eerily similar to the whole dynamic with Slater and Rhino that we just saw the previous week, but that might just be a coincidence. The match ends when Sheamus hits a cheap shot on the outside, Rollins with the receipt, and then the distraction, Cesaro's distracted, Jordan hits him with that jumping or the toss-up neckbreaker move he has to win the match. And so yeah, I think it was good. It really shows more of the conflict betwixt Rollins and Jordan of course is being too big for his britches. That might be the first time you've ever heard the words betwixt and britches in the same sentence. Our next match is Bray Wyatt versus Apollo Cruz, who is flanked by the members of Titus Worldwide. I mentioned this months ago when she was the henchwoman to Charlotte, but I really enjoy Dana Brooke's mannerisms. She's so just big and over the top with all of her emotions and her mannerisms and everything. You cannot help but, and notice her and see what she's doing. And she does a lot of that in this match too. She's every moment that happens in this match, she's paying extremely close attention. She's leaning in with her pad and pencil, like taking notes and stuff, and she's yelling at Apollo to tell him to get up. At one point, she gets on the apron to encourage Apollo. Then Bray just looks at her and she falls. She faints into Titus's arms. Bray wins with Sister Abigail after a pretty competitive match here. It makes Apollo look better than he normally does as of late. Then after the match, Woken Matt Hardy shows up on the screen. He cuts a promo, and then at the end, you see like dozens of Matt Hardys showing up. The screen is multiplying, and you see like it's kind of the Wayne's World joke, and so on, and so on, and so on. I love they keep cutting back to Bray. Like, this is something I didn't really notice the previous week that I noticed this week, that I all of a sudden now I'm really interested in the story. You cut back to the shot of Bray Wyatt and how perturbed and confused he looks. He looks so bewildered to be in the presence of Woken Matt Hardy. It's been fun. I've been so back and forth. My opinion on this angle has been kind of changing like the wind the last like 4 weeks, but now it's like, now that I'm seeing this and seeing that Bray is like, he's showing more trepidation and more hesitance toward Matt Hardy here than he did for Finn Balor in their multi-month feud. And like, Finn Balor's supposed to be taken seriously. So the fact that Bray is now being, I don't know if that like devalues Bray or really builds up Matt Hardy. I don't know, you be the judge in that one. But seeing that kind of interplay now between Matt being crazy and then Bray kind of being like, what the hell's going on here? That to me gets me more invested in this. Backstage, you see Alexa Bliss once again getting worried about her match with Asuka. She tracks down Nia Jax and wants her to be in her corner for the match, but Nia Jax, who looks like, and I'm going to credit R. Felix Finch for this one in a chat we had earlier this week, she looks like a high school sophomore with her hair and the backpack and everything. Just not a very good look for Nia Jax, who's supposed to be this intimidating badass woman. She comes out with the chicken soup and she's going to go and help Enzo feel better because he's like hospitalized with the flu apparently. That's why he couldn't be on Raw on Monday. We then go to the match itself, the non-title match between Alexa and Asuka. They are making a very big deal of this first time matchup here, and I think it is a pretty big deal when you look at it, because Asuka, of course, her reputation precedes her. She's a badass. She's had this undefeated streak for so long. And Alexa Bliss, even though she's lost, you know, the average amount of times for a wrestler, she still has been a very dominant player in the women's division on Raw and SmackDown for the last year and a half or so. So I don't think they're on the same level necessarily. I think Asuka's above that, but it's still kind of a big deal to see this matchup here. And it's a very good match. It's a good story being told here. The problem is, as good as this match is, this crowd in Miami is not caring. It's the day after New Year's in a party town, so I guess you can excuse them for being dead. It's a very consistent thing throughout the show. There are moments of brilliance from this audience where like they do pop for the right things, but for matches like this and then for stuff later on in the night, the fans just don't give a shit. They are just so dead for so many like pivotal moments in this show. And you know, I try not to let the crowd like affect my opinion of a show, but this was just a bad crowd overall. But anyway, that be that as it may, it was still a really good story. I really enjoyed watching this match. Asuka puts Alexa in the armbar, makes her tap out, clean as a whistle, and I was expecting maybe Absolution to run it or something. But yeah, the fact that they build this as like a WrestleMania quality match or WrestleMania worthy matchup being done here on Raw makes me think this match is not going to happen at WrestleMania. Asuka may win the Women's Rumble for all we know, but I don't think she's going to be facing Alexa Bliss. Something tells me something is going to happen that makes it different. Otherwise, why would they give it away like this on Raw? We go backstage where Renee Young interviews Samoa Joe, and he probably cuts like the promo of 2018 so far in this young year, where he says that Dean Ambrose is now a stay-at-home husband living off his wife's paycheck, and he says this directly to Dean Ambrose's wife. That's a pretty savage moment there. Our next match is Braun Strowman versus Rhino. It soon turns into an impromptu handicap match when Slater keeps getting on the apron and Strowman's having none of it. The match ends pretty quickly when Strowman hits Slater with a running power slam to win. Then he proceeds to spam running power slams on Slater and Rhino over and over again. And you know, this is one of those moments where the crowd does get into it. You know, this dead-ass crowd in Miami does wake up and does react appropriately for this domination we're seeing from Braun Strowman. Strowman is just over no matter what. You know, they're probably not going to pull the trigger on him at the Rumble, but you know, if not at the Rumble and not at No Mercy last year, then like when? At what point do you keep teasing this thing with Strowman as a top guy and you don't pull the trigger on him? That is what is getting so frustrating. I think by the time they finally do give him the championship, it's going to be the point where it's like, well, you know, the spark is gone. After the match, Braun's walking backstage and he sees Kane, who just wants to talk, and Kane makes the offer that the two should work together against Brock Lesnar at the Rumble, and Strowman says no and then breathes heavily at Kane for what feels like a minute before Kane finally backs away. Intercontinental title match as Roman Reigns defends against Samoa Joe. It's a rematch from the previous week, but after the results of last week's match, if Roman gets disqualified, he loses the championship to Samoa Joe. So that's the basic story here, is Joe keeps trying to goad Roman into getting himself disqualified to the point where at one point Roman is so angry he wants to hit Samoa Joe with the stairs, and Joe's like, finish me, you coward, like he wants to get hit to win the championship. So beyond that though, the match itself was really good. I think this is one of the better matches these two have had in their, you know, at this point long and storied, their growing catalog of matches against each other. Just so hard hitting, so physical this match is. And that's the best word you can use to describe these two guys going at it. It's like two big bulls just butting heads. And this is one of my favorite matches, my favorite match of the whole week, really. As the match reaches the crescendo, Joe's trying to hit Roman with the Uranagi, but he shoves Roman into the referee, who then takes a bit of a bump, and he's like, what the hell, Roman? Why'd you run into me? I'm going to disqualify you. But like, dude, are you fucking stupid? Because you saw all that. Like, you were looking right at it. You weren't distracted. So I don't know why you would have thought that Roman deliberately ran into you. But then he is actually shoved out of the way by Roman, shoved out of harm's way. Joe does get the coquina clutch on him, but Roman throws him off, hits him with the spear. Reigns wins. And, you know, okay, people are going to complain that Roman Reigns wins too much. Whatever. Just in this match here, it was a great match. I loved it. I mean, again, hard hitting, high drama, great story. I have no complaints. Cruiserweight time as Drew Gulak and Daivari are in the ring. Of course, Enzo, like I mentioned, is out with the flu. He can't defend the title against Cedric Alexander as was advertised this week. So Gulak is cutting out Enzo's promo on behalf of Enzo, and it's pretty hilarious stuff. Gulak is just doing so great in this role, this kind of nerdy, like I said, kind of Jake Peralta kind of role here in 205 Live. I'm loving what Gulak's doing here. So then Cedric comes out and he wants a match since Enzo can't defend the title. So, you know, but Gulak and Daivari say they want a tag team match. So who is Cedric Alexander's partner? Well, I don't know what Kalisto's doing, but he doesn't come out. Rich Swann, well, that's a whole other story. Then out comes Goldust. I mean, Goldust of all people, who, what a weird trajectory we have seen from Goldust in the last, like, year or so. Because he breaks up, he turns heel on R-Truth. He cuts about, 3 months worth of promos, it feels like. The blow up between he and Truth really doesn't go anywhere. It's kind of a dud. He teases a storyline at SummerSlam, then we never see him again, pretty much. And now he's here for some reason. Okay, it was still kind of a fun little match. There was a little botch though, because at one point he's trying to hit, in the hot tag, he's trying to hit Gulak with the running bulldog, but Gulak kind of sandbags. I don't know what happened there, but good cover by Goldust to try to hit him with some punches, bring him to the corner, then do the bulldog. It was kind of good professionalism there by Goldust. He actually does hit a twisting cross body off the top rope onto the heels, which I've seen him do before, but it's always cool to see him do it, especially someone as, you know, who's been in the business as long as Goldust. He's always trying to do new and exciting things in this stage in his career. Cedric wins the match for the team, and that's pretty much it. Again, weird seeing Goldust here. It would be kind of funny to see him in 205 Live and competing with the cruiserweights, and like nobody questions it, where it's like, okay, I guess you're 205 pounds now. Let's just make this work. Our final match of the evening sees Elias and the Miz Taraj take on Finn Balor and Gallows and Anderson. Yes, we are seeing a bit of a Bullet Club reunion on Monday Night Raw. That was a pretty cool moment to see. I will say, I love, like I mentioned a few weeks ago when they did it the first time, and they're doing it again here on Monday. I do love the chemistry of Elias and the Miz Taraj and just how bad musically Bo and Curtis are. You have to work really hard to sing that badly and off key, and also just off rhythm from what Elias was doing. And they do such a straight face, and everyone, no one's corpsing. It's just, I love that kind of stuff. But again, I must talk about the crowd here and how unresponsive they were at times to some things that were like softballs. At one point, you know, they're in Miami, and Elias in his song takes a dig at The Rock, and the fans just don't pick up on it. They're booing kind of consistently, but that's kind of a point where you would kind of boo even louder, because hey, you're taking a shot at our, you know, our hometown boy of The Rock. So, but they just totally missed it, and that was like an easy, that was a softball. That was an easy give for the fans to boo that one, and they just totally missed it. But anyway, the match happens. You know, the Magic Killer on Bo, coup de grace, the club win. I just want these three to be together now, because like none of them are doing anything, because Finn is just kind of aimless, and so is Gallows and Anderson. They're kind of like, they de facto turned faces now because Nerd is getting over. So yeah, why not make them a full-time unit? Raw closes out with the Year of the Beast, in which Paul Heyman does good Paul Heyman things on the microphone with Brock Lesnar at his side. Then Kane interrupts, he gets in the ring, just chokeslams Lesnar, no struggle at all, and as Kane's walking away, Lesnar sits up like Kane does. And then they have like, this ending was like, well, I don't know if they were rushed for time or what, because it was a very awkward, lame way to end the show, because then he sits up and they have like the briefest of scuffles outside the ring, and by the time they're on the outside, like half the roster is just magically materialized into place and they break everything up, and we don't really get much of a brawl between these two. Maybe they're going to do something more in the build with all three parties of the Universal title match, but it was just this thing where it's like they're immediately split up, and like Kane's backed away, Brock has a hard time holding the belt up correctly, fade to black. Like that was not a strong way to end. And honestly, I think it was a good callback to Kane sitting up from the F5 a week or two ago on Raw. But again, the crowd didn't give a shit. Like, you know, him sitting up should have been a big deal. They popped minuscule for it, but really it should have been a bigger deal than it was. And as much fun as it is to bash the product in general, I don't think this week's edition of Raw was like the fault of WWE for like the crowd reaction. I think it was the crowd was a bad crowd. Like they reacted ever so slightly to a couple of things in the right points, but for the most part, I think this is one of the stronger episodes we've seen in the last several weeks on Raw, and the crowd like just didn't give a shit. Again, it probably is the holidays and they were probably all hungover, even the kids too, but what are you gonna do? SmackDown opens with AJ Styles, the champion, coming out to the ring and saying there's a lot of guys that want to win the men's Royal Rumble match. There's that distinction again. Can we not just assume that when a guy is talking about the Rumble match, he's talking about the men's Rumble match, and then when a woman is talking about the Rumble match, she's talking about the women's Rumble match? It seems weird to have to insert, you know, the pronoun, the men's Rumble, the women's Rumble. We get it. Like, we can figure it out ourselves. I don't think Bayley's going to enter the men's Rumble match. AJ calls out Daniel Bryan to figure out what happened at the end of last week's show, but before Daniel can even say anything, out comes Shane McMahon to interrupt, and he apologizes to AJ for basically costing him the match last week against Kevin Owens, and he wants to make it up for him in the main event tonight against Sami Zayn, where of course Kevin Owens is going to be in Sami's corner. So Shane says, I'll be in your corner. Then Daniel's like, and I'll be out there too, and AJ just looks pissed and just kind of beside himself. He's like, this shit again? And then Corey Graves caps it off by saying the best line, what could possibly go wrong? First match of the night's for the SmackDown tag titles as the Usos defend against Benjables, who won the #1 contendership last week on SmackDown in a hell of a match, and this match was no different. I think there was a really good stuff between these two teams here. Four great athletes, great workers. There is one point out of the commercial break where Jimmy hits a spin kick on Chad, and the angle they show is like they're 2 inches off, at least 2 inches off each other. It does not connect. It's a bad angle. I mean, it's bound to happen. It's live TV. You might not always get the best angle, but that's one thing I noticed right out of the commercial break. They hit a double team move onto Jimmy Uso, and I think at this point they still haven't given a name to that double team move yet, so I don't know what to call it. call it, and holy shit, Benja Bulls win. They win the match clean and decisively. That was like a crazy moment, but wait, we're not done because it's a dusty finish. In Florida, what are the odds? Because it turns out they used instant replay, the selective instant replay, to show that neither man in the finish was actually legal. Chad and Jimmy Uso, Chad and Jay Uso were the ones Chad pinning Jay, but neither man was actually legal. So they restart the match. Usos retain ultimately after a bunch of different super kicks and a splash on a Shelton Benjamin, and that's the match. I think, it is frustrating when they do selective, like, real world logic and use instant replays to kind of change finishes like that, but I think when they use it very sparingly, I don't know, it's not, I guess it wasn't so frustrating because this match was so good. I enjoyed myself. I escaped into this matchup. So when Chad and Shelton won, I was like, holy shit, that's amazing. That's so cool. And so it was kind of like, oh, you felt like just like, a fan again when you're watching that match. I think that's kind of like what I took away from it. So I tried to put my smart glasses away and like think, well, oh, instant replay, blah, it's fine. I think in this case it worked fine. Up next is Breezango versus the Bludgeon Brothers Part 3, and I don't know how new this is, if this is a new thing this week or it showed up earlier and I didn't notice it, but the Bludgeon Brothers have a custom lower third now. Not everybody gets the custom lower third treatment, so good on them for that. We don't even get to see the end of the recap from last week before they cut it off because the two teams were fighting each other. The Ascension run in to try and save the day, but they get destroyed. So I guess we're going to be seeing this inevitable 4-on-2 handicap match between the Bludgeon Brothers and these four goofs, and they're all going to get destroyed by the Bludgeon Brothers at some point. But also something I was thinking about this week was the Bludgeon Brothers will eventually have to use the mallets they come to the ring with, right? Like, you see them, they walk to the ring with the mallets, they put them down, then they wrestle. So what's the deal with the mallets? What's the point? I mean, it kind of reminds me of like the Dynamic Dudes when like they came to the ring with the skateboards in their arms, but never actually riding them. That's the vibe I'm getting here. US title tournament match as Xavier Woods takes on Aiden English. I love the fact that all the backstage conflicts we've seen over the last several weeks between the New Day and Rusev Day are over the dumbest, goofiest, most innocuous things. It's never like a real grudge that happens. It's always over the pancakes, where it's like this week it's Rusev blowing out the candle of Xavier Woods' pancake display. Or, on the week before Christmas, Rusev like grabs the pancakes and throws them down and steps on them. Like, that's all they're fighting over essentially. And it's so goofy because the matches are so good between these two teams. But the stuff they do backstage, it's entertaining, and it's like by the end you figure out why they're fighting. And when you think about it, why? They're fighting for the stupidest, cartooniest of reasons, and I love it. More entertaining stuff from these two teams, like I mentioned. At the top of the match, Rusev sings instead of Aiden English, which is pretty funny. They make a couple of references to Rusev as Gaston, since they are in Orlando, home of Disney World. So at one point, Corey Graves makes a Gaston reference about Rusev, but he can't finish the rhyme correctly because he does. Oh, as Rusev was a kid, he ate 4 dozen eggs to get large. Now, as an adult, he eats 5 dozen eggs. That's why he's so big. I'm like, did you mean to screw that up? At one point, Xavier hits Aiden with the lumbar check, but the announcers don't call it that. I mean, it's basically the same move, because the difference is, Cedric tosses the guy up, then drops him, whereas in this one, Xavier has Aiden up on his shoulders like a torture rack, then drops him onto his knees. But it's basically the same damn move. So why didn't they call it the lumbar check? I have no idea. Why did Xavier do the lumbar check when one guy on 205 Live already does that move? I have no idea. Xavier wins after he hits the elbow drop off the ropes and advances. You cut to Jinder Mahal, who's backstage looking on, because they're going to be fighting each other next in the tournament. And yeah, very good match overall. Up next is a 6-woman tag team match as Natalia, Carmela, and Tamina take on the Riot Squad. And so I guess no explanation is going to be given as to what Natalia meant in her post-match promo Clash of Champions. And the welcoming committee are faces now. That just makes no sense to me, because like nothing about those 3 women comes off anything face-ish at all. Like, they came out to spoil the Riot Party's fun last week, but that's not enough. Like, it just, nothing makes sense. I think just the balance is so off between face and heels in terms of the women's division on SmackDown that they're just kind of like faces by default, but that doesn't really jive well with me. The match ends when Sarah Logan hits a cartwheel knee drop onto the back of Tamina's head after she was pushed off of the top rope by Liv Morgan. Ruby Riot cuts a promo after the match saying that magic isn't real. Okay, and then talks about the Women's Rumble match some more. Then out comes Charlotte to interrupt, and she brings out Naomi and a returning Becky Lynch. We hadn't seen her in a few weeks. She was written off TV by the Riot Squad to film her role in the Marine 6. Review for that coming soon. And so yeah, now we finally see some more balance, like some more balance is restored a little bit. It's still not 50-50, but with Becky Lynch coming back, that is going to help boost the face side of the women's division in a big way. But the match itself was like, I didn't care. Main event time as AJ Styles takes on Sami Zayn with everybody at ringside. The match itself, it was decent. It wasn't anything spectacular. The story was everyone on the outside. It was basically kind of a different version of like the Clash of Champions match with slightly different ingredients and different ways of preparing the food. Because you've got Shane, you got Daniel, you got Kevin Owens on the outside. Kevin is, ejected for meddling at one point near the end, but then Daniel gets on the mic and says, hey Shane, you should leave too, which I guess makes sense because after all, Shane put himself in the match to counteract Kevin Owens' influence, so if Kevin's gone, then Shane should be gone too. But in the confusion of all that, Sami hits AJ with a Helluva Kick, pins him, and now 2 weeks in a row, AJ's been pinned by the team of Kevin and Sami. So now AJ's pissed. He's mad at Shane and Daniel, tells him to quit bickering like children. He says, why don't I just fight these two guys in a handicap match? Then Daniel goes, that's a great idea. It's going to be a handicap match at the Rumble for the championship. Yes, and that's how the show ends, and AJ's pissed. And so, which one of these guys is the heel authority figure then? Because for weeks we get this idea, this vibe that like Shane is showing some heelish tendencies, or he's a justified heel at the very least. But now we get this whole thing with Daniel like clearly stacking the deck against AJ Styles, or is it some kind of long con, some long play for something else? It is a very interesting wrinkle here. And it's funny that this match is happening because like literally after last week's Who Wore It Better, a fan either messaged me on like Twitter or on the comment section basically predicting this very scenario. It maybe not a handicap match, more like a triple threat, would be Kevin and Sami against AJ Styles. But I think he pretty much nailed it. And I have some ideas of how this is going to go at the Rumble. I won't get into them here, but it is a very interesting wrinkle, and I think it's definitely AJ's like biggest obstacle as a babyface champion to date. Time now for me to decide which show won for the week, Raw or SmackDown. For the last several weeks I've been giving it to the blue brand, but this week I have to end the drought and Raw has to get it this week. Because honestly, I think Raw was a stronger, more refreshing, more entertaining show. Like yes, the crowd sucked and the third hour was weak overall, but then again, we saw some brand new fresh matches we have not seen before, and SmackDown had a lot of the same combinations that we've seen for weeks and weeks. We saw Asuka and Alexa Bliss for the first time. Did they kind of give it away? Sure, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, when they have their inevitable pay-per-view matchup. But we saw Jason Jordan and Cesaro. Hadn't seen that before. We saw, Roman and Joe. We've seen them before, but it was a very entertaining matchup. Seeing the club reunite in a way was also very entertaining, even though it was kind of short and you kind of wish there's something was more behind that. Those are the biggest takeaways I had with Raw. I just felt, a lot of the stuff they had felt different. Goldust getting involved with the cruiserweights. What the hell? It's like, it's different, and it makes you kind of want to say, well, what the hell are they going to do with this? Is this going to lead somewhere? With SmackDown, I did enjoy Usos and Benjables match. That was great. Even the dusty finish they had, it did not detract from me from the enjoyment of that match. Xavier and English was a great match, but again, we've seen the combinations of New Day and Rusev Day for a long time now, and it's fun, but we've seen this before. Shane and Daniel, their conflict was fun as well, but as far as what I didn't like about SmackDown, I am getting tired of seeing the Breezango and Bludgeon Brothers and now the Ascension, blah, whatever's happening there. The women's segment, honestly, the Riot Squad, a few weeks into this run, they're not doing it for me the same way like Absolution is. I think they're making a much bigger impact on Raw than the Riot Squad is on SmackDown. Like, even though they're like the story of the women's division, I feel they're just kind of like, like what are they doing? That's kind of my take. I think Raw was overall the stronger show just because on the strength of the more unique matchups that we have not seen before. So kudos to Raw for having some originality with their matchmaking this week. Let me know what you guys thought about Raw and SmackDown in the comments section below, and vote for which show you thought was better in the gimmick in the upper right hand corner of your screen. Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com, and check out Patreon.com/WrestlingWithRegret for exclusive perks and some bonus content, some new bonus content heading your way in the coming weeks. I'm Brian Zayn, and I'll see you next time.